days, cruisers in our spaceship, lulled into endless enjoyment, are now only too happy to let someone else arrange the sunsets. The tropics have sunk below the horizon, and we're still isolated from the world in our immense floating resort. But by now, all our 1,100 shipmates seem mildly transmogrified. Inhibitions lost, hidden talents emerging. Who, for example, would have expected to find singing with the Joe Loss Band a world-famous surgeon? Dr. Christian Barnard, the South African who transplanted the first heart. So taken out of himself, he's behaving like a heartthrob, while the Earl of Lichfield's behaving like a photographer. Upon his fellow cruisers, Professor Barnard lays a little lilting Afrikaans.
Nog lang voor die oorlog het begin. O, breng mij terug naar die oude transport.
I'd suggested he sing something more relevant, like I left my heart in San Francisco, or why not take all of me, or maybe even Mac the Knife. But, smooth operator that he is, he only knew the actions, not the words. The QE2 reaches China. British China, that is. This is China's capitalist flip side. Hong Kong. The Crown Colony's population is 98% Chinese, like the QE2's pilot today. Their sea city awakes at dawn. This serene setting is the improbable graveyard for a sister ship, as Captain Arnott recalls.
Yes, Queen Elizabeth, when she caught fire and sank, she was just over there in the bay. And she's been completely cut away now, since nothing left.
It's a rather sad moment. Did you ever
Very
serve
sad
on that?
Yes, for a long period in the 1950s in particular, yes. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a great ship.
His great ship, crisscrossed by star ferries, moves majestically through this merchant city, which, with no resources at all in its 400 square miles, except its 5 million people, needs to import everything, even drinking water. Yet Hong Kong has become the golden dream city at the end of the Chinese rainbow. This ocean terminal at Kowloon's the perfect port of call for all cruise liners, for, first of all, they anchor downtown amid all that shopping, which pleases passengers. Then there's a workforce that's ready, willing and cheap, which pleases ship owners. So instantly, the well-trained thousands swarm over this Leviathan like ants upon an elephant, finding their way into the most improbable places. Those on the high rope seem poised for some death-defying circus act. Though to them, it's all in a day's wage. With no lines of demarcation, no restrictive practices, no inter-union rivalries, these hordes of workers will live on board during the 3 days the QE2's in port, sleeping rough in whatever corners they can find when the hammering has to stop. They're everywhere. Fixing air conditioning, changing carpets, even polishing the ceilings. In the midst of this spring clean, Cunard contrived to get their vast holiday machine shipshape while its paying guests are in residence, mainly by encouraging them to go ashore and keep out of the way during working hours. So, while our backs are turned, new faces appear on the sun deck, New shipboard activities take over where yesterday they were playing shuffleboard. The name of this game is concentration, so amid the noisy shambles, the poolside loungers are out of action. The QE2 certainly needs all the attention she can get, for after the Falklands expedition, her hull had been painted a delicate grey, and there's no doubt it does show the dirt. The intention now is to send her out of Hong Kong looking whiter than white. Far below their unmechanised approach, one paint junk does duty as safety boat for anyone who loses his grip. British workers may prefer to stay securely on the rails, but in Hong Kong they know the ropes. None of that sissy stuff with safety lines or scaffolding. You see what I mean about circus acts. There's more Chinese enterprise inboard. Merchants have come bearing trinkets to sell to the crew. Every working alleyway becomes a bazaar.
After you go through this checkpoint, you will meet a custom counter, where the custom officers will check all your belongings according to your declaration form. Have you all filled in your declaration form? Will you please show me your declaration form?
All that Hong Kong hard sell, all those acrobatic worker ants can make life noisy for the fortunate drones who are trying to enjoy a peaceful cruise. So we're encouraged to fly away, and hundreds of us escape into China.
This is the Chinese custom declaration form. You found all together 2 sheets of paper. First page red, second page black.
Some cruisers go on 5-day tours to Beijing and Shanghai, while others, having completed all those colourful forms, face up to a grey Chinese world at the Macau border.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to China. Now we are in the mainland China. This one-day tour with a go-to visit. One of the counties in this place is named Zhongshan County. But now we pass through this part. It's called Zhuhai City. And this place just like the farming area. But now our government decided to build up this place as the special economic zone and a special industrial area. So more buildings are being built, and factories, hotel buildings.
Shiki is the capital of this relatively affluent farming area in the Pearl River Delta, where cruisers arrive for lunch at its guest house. It sustains party officials and foreigners.
Up and down and raise the hips there to pick it up. You have to put the top one, okay, put the top one between these 2 fingers.
All of them doing what comes quite naturally.
Look as though you're... I mean, here we are. Yeah, that's much nicer. Now.
And afterwards, the Shiki city tour. Last year, China produced fewer than 200,000 motor vehicles, but 25 million bicycles. There's also a certain amount of recycling. Shiki's only a few hours from Hong Kong, so locals are used to visitors. They're still easily distinguishable, but they no longer stop the traffic. Then it's goodbye, Shiki, and it's hello, countryside. Cruisers observe Peking duck on the hoof. and discover that it's the buffaloes that really need webbed feet. They consider a Chinese laundry country style, and a showplace village we've motored hours to see, the one that's regularly subjected to such tourist examination. Down on the communal farm, cruisers take pictures of sweet and sour, soon to be absorbed into the party system. Back in Hong Kong, it's day 2 of the wash and brush up, when each pair of painters on each bobbing platform says, "You hold the brush, I'll steady the ship." For passengers remaining on board, there's honey still for tea, and only a passing face at the window to remind them shipboard life is not as usual. During our 3-day look-no-hands cliffhanger, only one dauntless painter fell off the face of this 13-story pile. Chap probably showed a yellow streak when they made him walk the plank. However, 1 or 2 of them were quite securely anchored. The turbines and boilers also demand Chinese attention. They've been known to play up in the past, and steaming 13,000 miles to the Falklands at 28 knots, flat out, didn't help.
In the hospital, that pipeline's back in, so we can put it back on. Okay? Now that one's still isolated there in the boiler room, so you can go ahead with that one. Okay?
Almost every year, some cruise grinds to an unhappy halt. And Cunard say ruefully that whatever goes wrong with this ship, it always hits the headlines and it always costs £1 million. Doesn't matter what it is, it's $1 million. But in Hong Kong today, this is not a repair, but a quick service for a mere £250,000. The QE2's new general manager, Captain Ridley.
Well, it's a continuing process. Unfortunately, the schedules we've been keeping haven't lent themselves to a long life. The boilers, although of course the boilers are now 14 or 15 years old, and the ship will have steamed 2 million miles in the next day or so. That's more than the old Queen's steamed.
Yes.
We reached the old Queen's target in about just over half the time.
Is that because she's steaming faster, or are you just getting more?
No, because we have less time in port.
Which is why, with running costs of £140,000 every day and schedules planned years ahead, repairs need to be fast. The ship has to move to earn, and boilers must be kept on the boil. Inside one of the QE2's 3 cavernous boilers, they're emptying the grate. And like the painting, this decoke is mainly done by hand. It's chippings with everything in this Chinese takeaway. The man who also keeps a firm eye on the outgoings, who in effect owns the QE2, the chairman of Trafalgar House, Nigel Brokes.
This ship cost about £33 million to build. She'd cost today about £200 million. The P&O company are building a new one in Finland, which is about half this size, and that's costing £80 million.
See, I've always been baffled that you've bought legends, really. You've gone into newspapers, you bought the Ritz, you bought the QE2.
Good names, yes.
All good
names. We couldn't
names.
have built the QE2. It was much more sensible to buy Cunard.
So if you'd known in '71 what you know now, you'd certainly have gone through the whole exercise again.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it wouldn't be. There is no other company like Cunard that would. If we hadn't got it, it would either have gone bust, or somebody else would have bought it. It was in too much trouble in an executive sense to sort itself out. It had to be sorted out by a new owner. And it was a unique opportunity which we took.
Now, a place like this, for example, which is the ultimate in luxury, it would seem to be an anomaly in today's travel, because travel has been Lakerized, really, has it not?
The luxury and the size of the ship is what sells them, plus the speed. We can do 28 knots if we need to, with no difficulty at all. Other cruise ships are 18 to 22. Now, that's one point.
So 12 weeks in this suite, for example, would cost us what?
£180,000, something of that sort.
£180,000?
Yes.
I can remember on the first world cruise of the QE2 in '75 that the media whipped up a lot of antipathy towards the ship. They were talking about the idle rich travelling on board, escaping from austerity and a flagrant waste of money and that sort of thing. The fact that many of the passengers were publicans and small shopkeepers and London Transport bus inspectors didn't really get through, but nevertheless there was a lot of hostility really towards the QE2.
I think that was a relic of a sort of ill-natured Britain that now is behind us. It was completely misplaced at that time to make that sort of remark, but it was made. The fact was that we were in yet another foreign currency and balance of exchange crisis, and to have a ship earning 85% of her revenues from foreigners was a very important source of foreign exchange. I think Britain has changed. I would be ashamed of myself to have been associated with that kind of criticism in the mid-70s, and I don't think you'd get it now. We certainly don't get it, but I think the British public generally has woken up to the realities and doesn't mind at all. It applauds this kind of enterprise.
How much does it cost to keep her afloat now?
I suppose total costs this year about £45 million. Total revenue is about 50. So there's a margin of 10%, which is really extremely good. The problem has been oil prices, much more than labor costs. I mean, it costs more to fuel this boat than it does to pay the entire crew, plus the people who are on leave at present. But our revenues are mainly in dollars, and at present, we're definitely on the right side.
Because your crew costs are in sterling, of course.
That's right, and our income's in dollars.
Which is a happy position.
It's quite a good posture, yes.
So you're even looking at the QE2 really through the balance sheet.
You have to. That doesn't preclude an emotional involvement, but if you can't get the figures right, you better leave it alone.
And the QE2 figures are right now?
Oh, yes.
So now what about the future?
Well, a very happy future for 12 years as a minimum, and it could be 25. The only thing that will put this ship out of business will be technical obsolescence if new techniques come along that are far less fuel-intensive and things like that. But I don't see the slightest prospect of that happening. I'm very optimistic indeed about this ship.
The arrival of new passengers is celebrated, of course, by yet another captain's party.
Very glad to meet you, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Go. Mr. and Mrs. Yao. Mrs. Fortune. And Mr. and Mrs. Hall.
On this leg of the cruise, many passengers are Japanese, with names that can complicate a steward's life.
Mr. Tchaikovsky.
They're not much used to shaking hands and certainly not practiced at receiving this regal, stiff-armed welcome, but they handle it in their various ways.
And Mrs. Hoyman. Mr. and Mrs. Kosakai. Mr. and Mrs. Edson.
But in the end, it's the really foreign names that get you.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Next day, every one of their big moments is up for sale, and in every photo, the captain's strong right arm. To go her own way.
Smile! Other side!
Such sturdy independence probably means that, subconsciously, she just doesn't appreciate the theme from the River Kwai.
Just toe front. See those fingers?
The surrender is unconditioned. Still sunburnt and warm from the tropics, the QE2 ploughs through the Yellow Sea, where a British company is about to start drilling for oil. And after the weather we've known down on the equator, this forlorn scene does seem uncomfortably like the North Sea. But within this spaceship, the life to which a couple of thousand people have grown accustomed continues cosily, warmed and controlled by watchful guardians, quite independent of that distant world to which we once all belonged, which can now only intrude by radio.
Do you want to speak to Mr. or Mrs. Yap in Hong Kong? Sorry, no answer.
Hong Kong, Hong Kong, Hong Kong. This is QE2, 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 down on channel 811, 8749.9. You seem to be a bit better here. Can you give me a few words for tuning, please?
5, 4, 3, 2.
The QE2 has an officer's dining room, canteens for petty officers and crew, and 4 passenger restaurants. Yet the food here is said to be the best on board. In the bowels of the ship, her own permanent Chinese ghetto was struck a cruel blow in mid-Pacific when their New Year's Day disappeared without trace. Lost when the QE2 thoughtlessly crossed the international date line on that significant day. They were inscrutable, of course, and just carried on washing rather noisily. The crew get their laundry done free. Their passengers must pay 70 pence for every handkerchief that passes this way.
How many hours do your chaps work a day?
14 hours.
14?
14.
For how long, sir?
Every day.
Well, for the whole cruise?
For the whole cruise, sometimes import less.
And then how many months do you take off after that?
No, we don't take off. Usually we work for a year, then we take off for maybe about 2-3 months.
Then you go back to Singapore? Or?
We go back to Singapore, yeah.
Aha. I get the feeling you haven't got a union down here.
No, we got no union.
So downstairs, it's always full steam ahead as they press on, tending to the transmogrification of the fortunate 1100 upstairs.
Pick up the anonymous ones. I recognise you all. You can't fool me. Come on, Sally Supercop.
Up here, passengers can be cajoled into making much of their own entertainment. As I said, there's nothing like a cruise for changing your attitude and outlook.
And just as all to round up our parade this evening here.
Hong Kong, now below the horizon, may stand for the rights of the individual, but we're about to arrive in Communist China, which stands for the rights of the community. Then again, Hong Kong's a welcoming city, but China's always held off foreigners, so who knows what to expect.
Many jewelers, the gold and silver, jade, and antiquities.
Cruisers' worries about tomorrow's adventure into an alien world are calmed by the arrival on board of officials from the China Travel Service.
Yes. Do we need a converter in the hotel in Peking in order to use hairdryers, shavers, whatever?
220.
It's 220 volts in the hotels.
They hand out the good news and the bad news. No credit cards acceptable, they say, but there's no tipping. No 16mm films to be shot, though 8mm is acceptable, and so are photographs.
Would it be possible to get to the rug factory, the bar, directly?
They're having a giant ponder on that one. So the QE2 reaches communist China.
This wharf is building now. New wharf.
New wharf, yes.
Just a building.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just been built.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not on our job.
Thank you.
Qingdao, between Shanghai and Beijing, is one of China's biggest ports, yet little known to the world outside.
Slowstone Port.
Slowstone Port.
Bishop.
Midships.
Its ice-free harbour is navigable all year round for 10,000-ton vessels, but the QE2 is 7 times bigger. So they've had to build that wharf the pilot was telling the captain about.
Starboard engine stopped.
Having steered through the narrow harbour entrance, the pilot must now turn the QE2 through 90 degrees, while across the bow there's a tricky 3-knot current.
Harveston Port.
Harveston Port.
The QE2 observes some aging Chinese submarines and is in turn observed by Chinese television. Here, not to entertain its few viewers, but to make an instructional tape showing how the port coped with her biggest visitor and all who sail in her. The pilots also brought a number of colleagues to watch and to learn. On that new wharf, the first coaches arrive. They're joined by the first of 500 welcoming schoolchildren.
Stop engine.
The staff captain of the QE2, Keith Stanley, comes ashore. Waiting for him, the men from Peking. Their bureaucracy is a ponderous thing and stunningly slow, but in months of preparation, Cunard's got it across that their wealthy cargo has only a few hours to see and be seen, to change dollars, go on tours, buy souvenirs, and be back aboard by the stroke of 10. And it seems that after 2 decades of isolation and internal turbulence, China's now ready to receive tourists and their money. Without any delay, 2,000 passengers and crew are cheerfully nodded ashore. Passengers have taken the hint that perhaps it might be tactful not to overdress. The welcoming music's distinctive, though unmelodic. So that old monarchist band leader Joe Loss attempts to lead its pervasive drumming into the mood.
Now I'd like to give you our plan for your tour today. This morning, we are going to the carpet mill. That is our first stop. And then we will attend the banquet given by the mayor of the People's Government of Qingdao. I wish each of you will take the time schedule with you. You see, it's very important for you to be cooperative and to be on time.
In our motorcade of coaches brought in from surrounding cities, we feel like members of the Politburo waved through every road junction.
Qingdao is a beautiful seaside city.
This municipality has 8 times more people than the city of Manchester, yet until the turn of the century, it was a fishing village. Then, after the murder of 2 German missionaries, Admiral von Tirpitz landed an expeditionary force here and built a naval base, so the city might have been the German Hong Kong.
The city covers an area of 5,096 square kilometers with a population of 4 million. And the city proper covers an area of 92 square kilometers with a population of 1 million. Now the city...
The Japanese took over in 1914 and again in 38. And after the war, the US Navy was here until, in 1949, Chairman Mao dismissed the Yankee dollar. Today it seems to be quite welcome again.
The tourism center.
Qingdao has a textile industry, a fishery, and a lot of the nation's main resource, her 1,000 million people. Such children, brought here this morning to perform for us, are in China today a fearful delight. In some provinces, women with one child must have an abortion if they become pregnant again, and in any family with 2 children, the father or the mother must be sterilized. Despite this, the population's expanding by 13 million babies, or more than the population of London, every year. The enchanting children seem tireless. Wind them up and they perform endlessly. Before the inevitable factory inspection, cruisers are entertained to tea.
Well, happy days. Happy days. Yes.
Oh, what about me?
This is the beauty.
They also receive a very long speech from the factory chairman. His extended welcome tells us rather more about the history of carpet production at this mill than we wish to know.
Now, this mill was set up in 1954. At that time, it was a small unit with 6 workers. The carpet produced here is typical of a Chinese pattern.
We're finally released to admire the beautiful and subtle carpets they're producing for export.
I want to get one. I want to picture
After the mayor's banquet in the city auditorium, a children's orchestra. Cruisers who've enjoyed their lunch try to show their pleasure, while the East strives to entertain and to understand the West. For, as the Chinese say, to see once is better than to hear 100 times. Outside, those children have been wound up again for our departure. Captain Arnott, master of the QE2 and honoured guest, has become almost invisible in his civvies. Today he's overshadowed by these far more significant figures. This crowd of 20,000 had queued at dawn for tickets at 30 pence out of an average wage of £4 a week, and thousands were turned away, for this is the sporting event of the year. Qingdao FC playing the QE2. The ship's fielding a few stewards who've just served lunch, a singer from the Jolos band, a couple of stokers who are observed, as you might expect, suitably and scrutably. While contained within their own tiny stand, the away team supporters watch the vice mayor and their staff captain greet the teams.
All the best.
The referee is a local taxi driver. That's him, and very good he proves to be, whatever the opinion of visiting supporters.
Well, I hope you win, but I hope our side win first.
The rumour about returned tickets proved untrue. There's no car park, of course, but a noticeable bicycle park. And afterwards, every bike finds its owner. There's a Chinese puzzle for you. A Cunard vice president told me that before such a crowd, he'd be embarrassed if the QE2 won too easily. But it soon becomes clear that there's not much danger of that. They're no match for the semi-professional Chinese. In that eastern sea, the QE2 supporters are outnumbered. They're far more vocal. Such football fans provide an English puzzle for the Chinese. Spectating at this level is, of course, illegal. But for such a match, not even a good party man can resist an afternoon out on the tiles. After the first few goals, some wily guidance must have descended from the director's box, for the home team seems to relax, almost forcing the QE2 into scoring. What's more, the Orient is introduced to a new and doubtless mystifying chant. Can't think what the Chinese made of it. The final scores a diplomatic 5-2, so no faces are lost. Yet despite that very obvious defeat, QE2 supporters take a lap of honour and are resoundingly cheered. It was indeed a friendly game. A few celebratory firecrackers, but not a hooligan in sight.
The Chinese, they said it was an amateur side, but you saw the first 3 goals. Wouldn't have disgraced one of our league divisions.
No, first rate.
Until they slowed down, yeah.
Terry Conroy, a vice president of Cunard.
Well, I think the feeling was, where I was sitting in the stand, that friendship was more important than winning by 24 goals. So I think word was passed to, you know...
The word went down?
Yeah, smile a little more and run a little less.
So as we sail away from China now, Terry, from Qingda, how did the visit go from a QE2 point of view?
It was very successful. Never with that instant to take a ship as big as this into a country, frankly, that's just not dealing with it, ever. Particularly a small town like that. They've never seen a ship as big as this. They've had to dredge harbours, build wharfs, and bring in transport. They've shipped in people from throughout the country. You know, people walk down the gangway, they felt all these people were always there smiling. They've come from Peking, they've come from Dalian, they've come from Canton, just to have enough people there to handle us. You know, the whole thing with success, it had to be successful. Everyone had to save face. Every department, from the immigration, who really everything keyed onto, you may not have realised, but we came on board at 5:30 down the river, and I came on with about 90 of them. And we hauled ourselves into the ship. And one thing was important, to make the whole day work. The immigration had to clear 1,000 crew and 1,100 passengers in the space of 2 hours. And I've been brainwashing them for months on how to do it. And I said, if you cannot get our people, the ship cleared and our people down the gangway at 8:30, we can't come, it's impossible, time will be too short. And so everybody worked very hard to achieve it.
So they really want you. I mean, they want you as much as you want to go.
They want the foreign exchange.
Ah. Now, what do the passengers say today? I mean, well, are they sorry to leave that grey, shrouded place, or
I would say
the
vast majority are thrilled for this experience. They've just never had an experience like it, and I'm not saying they all want to rush back tomorrow, perhaps, but they're thrilled to pieces that they've been there.
Now, you see, this is the ultimate symbol of capitalism, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
You're coming in with 1,000 rich people.
That's right.
An opulence, which is quite extraordinary, even in the West.
That's right, yeah.
So you are hitting them with a heavy one, right from the start.
It used to worry us. We used to say to our passengers, you know, China is this, and perhaps you don't want to wear your best furs, and perhaps it may be better if you left the good jewellery and the safety deposits, and, you know, they're rather plain, and, you know, we tried to say to them, you know, don't really make such an ostentatious show, and most of our passengers would follow. But now, frankly, we've given up. The Chinese look at them as, I suppose, as visitors from another planet. I recall that very first time 4 years ago when we took this ship into Dalian, and 2 days. We had one or two concerns, many things that could have gone wrong, incidents, so on and so forth. Everything went beautifully. It was marvellous. And just before the ship was about to sail, its face had been saved, the tours had gone well, the ship had docked, it hadn't stuck, the pilots were terrific, everybody was thrilled to pieces, everyone was smiling, we were smiling, they were smiling, everybody was smiling, and I was down just where they were taking the gangway out, and there must have been 1,000 of them. The official was just down the bottom of the gangway, and I'm there, I've been everyone's friend, I was waving, and suddenly the captain's on the bridge and pulled the gangway out, and next minute he heard his voice, "Mr. Conroy! God, terrible problem!" And hold the gangway, and I rushed down, what is happening? And it was dusk, and he was holding a business card, and I was trying to see over his shoulder, "This is a passenger on your ship." And looking over his shoulder, and I eventually made out the name of an Englishman with an office in London, a managing director of some firm in London, and I said, "He's a passenger?" "I'm sure he was on the ship. What's the problem?" I thought, he's gotten lost, he's in jail, he's hurt himself, it could have been anything. And he said he bought a bicycle in the friendship shop. And I said, "He did?" And he said, "Yes, and we have failed to deliver it to the ship." "Oh," I said, "please, would I get a message personally to him? It was going to be air freighted by them to his office in London, and please not to let him think they hadn't delivered it." So we waved goodbye to China.
Any gift from a foreign land will be treasured, say the Chinese, though it be but a swan's feather. And the ruffled feathers in this baggage hold show that our costly cruisers are committing the holiday sin of the 80s. They're travelling heavy. Well, at least they didn't have to pay any excess. Passengers have their own ways of trying to get their money's worth. The easiest way, I suppose, is to masticate your money's worth, to eat 4 enormous meals a day. This is most popular. And stewards still recall one woman who insisted upon caviar with every meal, including breakfast. And when she went ashore on excursions, she had caviar sandwiches. We also have our big spenders. There's one chap on a day trip to Bangkok who, in the shop in the hotel lobby, bought a £25,000 ruby necklace while he was waiting for the bus. And it was the kind of shop where I would have thought twice about buying a tie. But shopping is the second most favourite pastime after eating. One couple, I recall, bought so many things on an earlier cruise, had so many suitcases, cabin trunks, tin trunks in their stateroom, that they had to move a bed out in order to make room. And the husband told me that it was the first time he'd slept with his wife for years. So some women will do anything to go shopping. Another woman came on board this ship with 27 trunks. The steward told me that he thought it was for the ship's shop. And then she went ashore, he said, and she bought another 3. They were to contain the things she was buying as she went along. The trouble with all this buying and all these clothes, of course, is the packing. And there's one woman on board here today who told me that when she gets back to Los Angeles, and she's done the whole Pacific cruise, right the way around, when she gets back to Los Angeles, she's going to fly out a maid and a manservant from Switzerland just to do the packing for her. We do have other unusual characters on board. I was being told by the captain, no less, one woman who rang up in the middle of the night, her steward, and said, "Order me a taxi." And the steward said, "Madam, we're in mid-Pacific." And she said, "That, son, is your problem." Now, romance, of course, that's the shipboard topic. Romance on the moonlit deck. Some women are not prepared to hang around and wait for Cupid to hit them with his arrow. they tend to want to give him a bit of a nudge. The way they do it, in one case, is to fly out a chap to every port. One woman has flown out her boyfriend to every port and flown the old one back. And while we're on the subject, and since nobody's listening, I must confess that since we've been on this ship, a member of the Whickers World team has got engaged. So never underestimate the power of a cruise.
I come for the lovely life you can have. It is a lovely life.
It has its ups and downs. I figure cruising is a different adventure every day. Some days can be absolutely boring as hell, and you think, oh, I'm going to jump ship. They can fly me back or do something.
Yes.
And then other times I'm having such a good time. I think, oh, of course, but I think life is a thing of contrast.
I'm planning to come back. I don't know who I'm going to rob to be able to do it, but I will do it.
I cry every time she leaves and that I'm not on her.
The minute I get in customs, I can't even recognize the people that were on the ship just 10 minutes before. But once you're off, you're going home. And in a few days, it's all a beautiful dream.